Hey, people, whoever you are. Thanks for stopping by for another episode in the story of Texas. We're still in the thick of things here at the Battle of the Alamo. Travis watched as another band of Mexicans swelled the ranks of the imposing army outside his fort. Things were getting really serious. Still no answer back from headquarters. But he needed James Fannin and the reinforcements right now. Of course, he still thought that they were coming, but he felt the need to prove it to himself. He sent Davy Crockett with 3 other men to go out and find the troops and hurry them along. But we know that Fannin wasn't coming. We know that Fannin had turned around and gone back to Goliad. Poor Travis didn't know this. But Crockett's search was not in vain, for all that. For you see, several of the men in Fannin's expedition had refused to turn around. They wanted to help their countrymen in the Alamo, and they would go whether someone officially led them or not. Thus, it was this small handful that Crockett found hanging around nearby the fort. They were having a difficult time figuring out how to get in without being detected by the Mexicans. Unfortunately, it seemed the only way was to make a run for it. They were spotted by the Mexican cavalry, and a wild chase ensued. Some of them eventually managed to make it into the mission, while a few others were chased off across the abandoned prairie. It is from these new volunteers that Travis learned the truth about Fannin. It must have been a hard blow to bear, for nearly all his hopes had been staked on the arriving of those reinforcements. But he didn't give up all hope yet. Surely more help would come from somewhere. He continued to send couriers out with desperate messages for assistance. And just what, you might be wondering, was the Texan government doing all this time whilst their men were in such great danger? Well, do you remember the Texan Convention I told you about? That one that was set to happen on March of 1836? It was on the first day of that month, whilst Travis and his men were holding out so bravely in the Alamo, that this meeting finally happened. The delegates assembled at Washington on the Brazos. The men elected to this meeting were younger than many of those of the old consultation, and generally had no reasons why they should make peace with Mexico. They had no lucrative impresario contracts to keep, or businesses that depended on that country. They were determined that Texas should thrive on her own. Thus, it was only a day before the big step was taken. Texas was declared an independent republic. George Childress held Texas to follow in the footsteps of America, penning a declaration similar to the great one of 1776. David G. Burnett became the first president of the new country, and a constitution was set to follow. But before this constitution could be written, another plea from Travis arrived. The members of the convention leapt to their feet, declaring with fervor that they would go and lend a hand in the new cause of their independence. All but Sam Houston. No, he argued. Let us organize the Constitution first. That is more important to our new nation right now. Somehow, he managed to persuade the excited Texans to attend to the paperwork, instead of rushing to arms. Why Houston did this? I don't know. But whatever the case, we see that Travis would get no help. He was truly on his own now. But he didn't know. He didn't even know that he was now fighting for the cause of independence. All he knew is that he must hold the Alamo against the Mexicans, no matter what happened. On March 4th, the 11th day of the siege, Santa Anna began to grow impatient. Their cannons had battered the Alamo and made some small breaches, but he wanted to finish the job. He announced to his officers that they would charge the fort on the morning of the 6th. Travis couldn't know what the Mexican dictator was planning, but he could guess. At any rate, he knew that they couldn't hold out very much longer. There is a famous story that on the morning of March 5th, he stepped into the middle of the courtyard and drew his saber. He drew a line in the loose sand with the blade, slowly and deliberately. Then he called to his men, explaining the direness of the situation, of which doubtless each of them was already fully aware. All who choose to stay and fight to the death, he said, may cross this line with me. He waited there alone, his saber still ready in hand. One man crossed, and then another, until every man had crossed the firm line drawn in the dust. The night of that same March 5th, the Mexican guns ceased their relentless storm. The exhausted Texans breathed a sigh of relief and soaked in the silence. It was the first quiet night since this long battle had begun. Many of them turned to their bunks to snatch a little sleep before, well, whatever happened. Even Travis allowed himself to drift off. This was just what Santa Anna had been hoping for. There was little sleep for his men that night. Everyone was busy getting into their positions, as quietly as possible. The Mexican Army of Operations was to split into 6 divisions for the coming assault. 4 divisions would attack the walls, 1 from each point of the compass. The 5th Division, all cavalry, would pick off any Texans who tried to escape the fort during the fight. The 6th was a reserve, commanded by Santa Anna himself. In the wee morning hours of March 6th, the Mexicans crept up to the Alamo. There was no need to worry about the 3 Texan sentries just outside the walls. These were found asleep and were killed as they stood. Even if anyone had been awake to notice the army's approach, it would have been most difficult to see them, for heavy clouds had drifted over the moon. Finally, the Texans halted, just within firing range of the little mission. Every man gripped his rifle, waiting tensely for the signal to charge.
Charge!